This year has been quite something for anime, and it's had no shortage of bangers. Still, some are definitely better than others, and as the year is winding down to an end, I figured it's time to highlight some of my favorite anime of the year. So, without further ado, these are my top 10 picks for anime for the year. Starting off at number 10, The Dangers in My Heart. This one was rather interesting because at first, I thought it was cringe and even creepy. The main character is an odd creation, and the whole reason I kept watching was because his love interest ended up being the most endearingly ditzy and childish character I've ever seen. And it was over time that the story as a whole won me over, and I actually began to like the main character. As the story goes, Kyotaro Ichikawa is the emo kid in class. He's constantly alone, suffers from the whole Chinibyo thing, and even plans to kill his own classmates in the beginning. That is, until he finds out that the person he wants to kill the most has secrets of her own. Over time, he sort of grows out of his hatred for his classmates and begins to enjoy his school life more than what he had previously. In spite of the start of the series and the premise, it turns into a rather wholesome show that I found entirely relaxing to watch. If I needed to take a break from all the grimdark stuff I watch and read, or if I just felt like being in a good mood, this was one of those shows I turned to. So much so that I found myself embracing the cringe a little bit and enjoying it. Yamada is easily the best part of the series, since her being an airhead is really what drove me to like it in the first place. But it overall ended up becoming one of my favorites for the year. Surprising, considering I dismissed it at first so heavily. Number 9. Mashle. This is probably the best a parody of Harry Potter can get. And if you doubt my assertion that this is a parody of Rowling's famous novel series, go try Mashle for yourself and then tell me that it's not. Mashle follows the story of young Mash Burndet, a young boy with no magic attending a school for magic while trying to keep it a secret that he can't actually use magic. The only problem is that he's dumber than a bag of rocks. It's a stereotypical shonen series with a meathead main character for the most part, but the premise kind of makes it fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously, embraces the comedy, and kind of goes on to embrace the overall insanity of the series. Mash is consistently the dumbest person in the room, though through sheer will and luck, tends to get through his difficulties no sweat, and his character being so over the top helps make it a much more lively show to watch than if it had just been a normal shonen and tried to take itself seriously. The comedy is really nonsensical, and a lot of the action follows the same trend. Still, though, it is wildly entertaining because of those things. Its brand of comedy mixed with the usual shonen action-based plot makes for a good, entertaining show, even though it makes no serious effort to break away from tropes and cliches. Overall, it feels like fun because it's far more a comedy than a serious story. Number 8. Shangri-La Frontier. This anime is pretty much Let Me Solo Her, the anime. Shangri-La Frontier was an unexpected gem to find this year. I honestly had no interest in it at first because game world anime just isn't my thing. But it caught me off guard with a novel premise and a great main character who is intelligent, witty, and has a sense of humor. The story follows the life of a hardcore gamer named Rakuro Hizutome, who makes it his business to conquer every shitty video game out there. However, when he finally decides to try a well-made game, he finds himself hopelessly addicted to the unique challenges that the game presents. And while he just wants to explore the game and have some fun, and get his revenge on a certain boss, his unique circumstances end up making him the object of focus for all the top players in the community, as he stumbles into some rather unique experiences. One thing I really love about this series is its combination of more serious storytelling with the wit and humor of its main character. While the plot overall is more of a serious story, it still has loads of comedic moments generated by Rakuro being an utter oddball. But it isn't just him being goofy that makes it fun. He's skilled too, which is where the fight scenes in this series actually impressed me. Not only did it feel more like strategy is the primary focus in combat in this series, the scenes are well animated when it matters. It helps build up the hype and interest in them. It used the game mechanic really well, and I'm glad it didn't try to make it some game world isekai fantasy series where the skills are part of the real world. Number 7. Zom 100, Bucket List of the Dead. Have you ever had a job you absolutely hate so badly you'd take the end of the world over going to work another day? I'm sure we've all had at least one day that made us feel that way. And this anime captures the view of a man worked to the bone for every day of his adult life, Zom 100 Bucket List of the Dead is a surprisingly positive story about living life to the fullest and not just focusing on that career. Akira Tendo was miserable in life, with his endless work life killing his desire to live right up to the moment when the zombie apocalypse came. Now, he spends every day surviving hordes of zombies and chasing after all the dreams he never got to live out. In an unapologetically comedic take on the zombie genre that feels fresh and unique, rather than seeing it as a bad thing, he sees it as his opportunity to catch up on living life. Again, it's a very comedic and at times surprisingly lighthearted show. I had a lot of fun watching the antics of larger-than-life characters as they tough out the zombie apocalypse as a team while dealing with some of the most ridiculous scenarios you can imagine. Zombie sharks with legs? Check. German otaku girl trying to deliver sushi? Check. Giving your boss the finger? Metaphorically? Check. It's all around goofy fun, and I definitely recommend you check it out. Number 6, The Apothecary Diaries. This was another series I was not expecting to like as much as I do. A minor mystery series intertwined with some romance and comedy. The Apothecary Diaries proves to be a well-written and highly entertaining show. It's about a Chinese girl named Mao Mao, an apothecary, being kidnapped and sold into servitude at the Rear Palace. She does her best to lay low and avoid getting herself into trouble up until she overhears the dire situation of the 2 infant children of 2 of the concubines staying in the Rear Palace. Through her unavoidable desire to help people in need, she's able to save one of the children. But that means she's quickly found out by Jin Shi, one of the supervisors of the Imperial Palace, as an intelligent and capable apothecary. And once he figures her out, she ends up continually roped into numerous mysteries and political maneuverings going on between the concubines and their serving staff. Look, an anime about Chinese concubines was not one I figured I would enjoy, but the fact is that it's a good mystery story with a tinge of comedy to add levity. The overall story intrigues me, but it isn't the draw power for this series in my opinion. It's the protagonist Mao Mao who does all that work. She, as a character, makes the whole series worth watching. Number 5, Heavenly Delusion. I love me a good sci-fi post-apocalyptic story. And Heavenly Delusion, a very underappreciated anime that came out earlier this year, is one that delivered just that for me. If you like a bit of horror, action, and adventure mixed all into one, then this has got you covered. The story is about 2 kids who live in Japan roughly 15 years after the end of the world. The younger of the 2, Maru, is on a mission to find a person who looks like him, with Kiriko acting as his hired bodyguard as she seeks out some missing people of her own. Their journey will take them through territories occupied by mutant abominations called man-eaters and dangerous gangs who'd like nothing better than to kill them and loot them for all they have. But their journey across the ruins of society allude to a much greater mystery than they could have imagined. I like the ominous atmosphere combined with the childish antics of the adventure. Kiriko and Maru are both still pretty young, and even though the world is dangerous, they're still prone to getting up to funny business whenever possible. It also has some big overarching mystery that plays into the state of the world, and trying to figure that out has been a good source of fun for me. That, plus the cool science fiction man-made abominations destroying the world aspect of the whole story, certainly is cool to see. I like good science fiction, especially in anime when it doesn't delve too far into any sort of shonen aspects. This series is also kinda dark at times, which also suits my taste. I recommend it if you can handle the strange and the tinge of dark. Totally a fun series worth watching. Number 4, Mushoku Tensei Season 2. This is hands down the most competently written, well-developed isekai series ever made. It may not hold the same place in my heart that Re:Zero does, but it certainly is a work of art. Season 2 of Jobless Reincarnation brings us back to the story of Rudeus Greyrat, and his struggles to fill the void left in his heart after being seemingly abandoned by his companion, Eris. Jobless Reincarnation is one that unexpectedly does well with tackling very strange subjects. While the overall theme of this part of the story is love and rejection, it can be a bit weird at times considering the main mechanism for this is Rudy's erectile dysfunction. And while it isn't quite at the same level as its predecessor, Season 1, it certainly does continue on in a good fashion. Not only does it use its very wild main plot point for character development, it also has a great animation game, giving some of the coolest scenes involving magic in the fantasy genre. And with incredible world building and storytelling, it earns a place as one of the best anime of the year in my eyes. The only real issue with it is how incredibly horny it can be at times, and the blatant sexual themes of certain scenes can make it really hard to watch if you don't have a door to lock yourself behind. But if that doesn't bother you, again, I highly recommend it. And now, before I get into my top 3, here's some honorable mentions. Some anime that were really good, but didn't quite make it into my top 10 this year. Demon Slayer Season 3 was cool, but the overall story of the season was mid at best, and it ended up being the weakest part of the anime to this point. Demons were underdeveloped, and powers started to make way less sense. I also feel like it dropped the ball a bit on the animation game, even though the head dance was really freaking cool. Bleach deserves a mention, as Thousand Year Blood War has greatly improved upon many of the areas I found lacking in Bleach. It's good enough to make me, a perpetual detractor, admit that this part of the anime has been cool so far. Still, I find the story a little lacking at times, and the power scaling system hard to follow. It feels like it also fails to deliver on some of the hype it promises as well, so I can't count it in my top 10. Hell's Paradise was yet another pretty cool anime, but it rushed too quickly into its power system, which it developed at breakneck speeds, only to end on a whimper rather than a bang. It's a good anime overall, but those two flaws kind of killed its momentum for me. And since nothing followed the sort of anticlimactic ending, I don't really feel it deserves a place in my top 10. 100 Girlfriends has been really fun to watch, but mostly just because it matches my shitter brain sense of humor. It's something I like to watch because it's more of a parody of the romance genre, and I still do like it, but this series has some genuinely cringe moments that aren't exactly all that great. Overall, still a hilarious anime, just on premise and shenanigans, but not quite worthy of being top 10. Number 3. Oshinoko. Brought to you by the creative genius behind the renowned Kaguya-sama Love is War, Oshinoko presents itself as the twisted sister of the acclaimed rom-com anime. From a dreadful deep look into the nastiness of the entertainment industry to utterly gutting emotional notes, this series is an excellent drama, if not a very strange one. The story centers on a pair of twins, Aqua and Ruby Hoshino, who happen to be the secret love children of an incredibly popular Japanese idol. The crazy part of this is that both are reincarnations who retained their sense of self and memories after being reborn. Having idolized their mother, Ruby decides to step into the same shoes and become a performer just the same. Meanwhile, Aqua works his way through the industry with a much more sinister intention. It's a bizarre tale that demonstrates just how excellent a writer Akasaka truly is, and its pilot episode happens to be one of the greatest sucker punches I've ever experienced in all of anime. It keeps an unusually good balance between tones as it uses Ruby to tell a bit more of a positive success story, while Aqua's is far more downcast and depressing as he pursues his singular goal driven only by rage. My only complaint was that its pilot was incredibly long and almost felt meaningless until the very end. That, and it really gets into the nitty-gritty of show business, which felt a bit overbearing at times. Outside those things though, it's utterly amazing. Number 2. Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. If ever there was an anime that blew the combat game out of the water, it would be Jujutsu Kaisen, and Season 2 is no different. It has all the flair and splendor of a well-produced series that is virtually unrivaled this year in terms of hype and awesome. This season brings to the screen one of the most popular arcs of the manga, the Shibuya Incident. Once the arc kicks off, it's almost non-stop action riding that hype train up to the pinnacle of the series, hitting tremendously cool fight after tremendously cool fight that makes this series hit the highest highs of the year, in my opinion. It's also pivotal to the story of Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole, as it really shapes how many of the characters behave from this point on and how the story progresses, even shifting away from the group that was positioned to be the major villains of the series to show the true scale of the plot. It's gritty, dark, and bold in many ways. Unafraid to kill off its cast, it quickly proves nobody is truly safe and that plot armor isn't as strong in this series and wreaks havoc on any unsuspecting souls who grew too attached to the characters. Unfortunately, this season has been mired by ongoing scandals over overwork at MAPPA, And that overriding issue made me feel a bit uneasy watching the series in spite of it being so good. On top of that, I can't really say there's a whole lot of substance to the story. I know the theme is generally loneliness and solitude, but it feels rather vacant of any serious motif meant to move. Number 1. Frieren, Beyond Journey's End. This show is absolutely perfect. From storytelling to characters to animation to soundtrack and right down to its premise, there is absolutely nothing wrong with Frieren. And while it doesn't reach the highest highs of the year, it certainly is a spectacular experience that makes you feel all the emotions while watching it. It is consistently good at everything it does. Frieren follows the story of an elven mage from which the series derives its title. She's a former member of the Heroes Party who defeated the Demon King and brought peace to the world. However, her skewed sense of personal relationships and time causes her to neglect her fellow party members after their parting, only to realize how much she regrets doing so after the death of one of them. It's a somber and nostalgic story, one where Frieren recounts the memories of her previous quest as she embarks upon a new one with new allies. It gives you a good mix of all forms of entertainment. Action, comedy, slice of life, adventure. It's all there in this one and really well blended together. It's a superb series, and one I can't recommend enough to those of you who are fans of the fantasy anime genre. It immediately jumped into my favorite anime of all time, and again, I really do urge you to go check this out. But hey, these are just my picks, in my opinion. I'm sure everyone has their disagreements, and I'd love to hear what you think are the best anime of the year. If you have any opinions to share, put them down in the comments, but please do not forget to like and subscribe, as those simple but free actions do really help me. I hope, as we're going into the holiday season and the end of the year, that you have a great holiday, a great Christmas, and an excellent new year. I will see you again very shortly. But that's all out of me. Later.